I was 7 years old the first time I understood what hunger really meant, not the kind that makes your stomach growl before dinner. The kind that keeps you awake at night, that makes you drink water just to feel something inside you, that makes you stare at other children eating and feel like you're watching a movie you'll never be part of. My father died when I was 5. My mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. We lived in a room so small you could touch both walls with your arms stretched out, but I made her a promise. I held her rough, work-worn hands one night when she came home crying, and I told her I would change everything. I didn't know how, I just knew I would. That promise became the only thing I owned that hunger couldn't take away. The school I went to wasn't meant for kids like me. It was on the edge of our neighborhood where the broken streets met the clean ones, where our world touched theirs but never mixed. Most days I walked an hour to get there because we couldn't afford the bus. My shoes had holes in them, my uniform was sewn and resewn so many times it looked like a patchwork quilt. The other kids noticed. Of course they noticed. Children are cruel in ways adults forget how to be. They pointed, they laughed. They moved away when I sat down like poverty was contagious. I learned to make myself small, to disappear into corners, to eat lunch alone behind the building where no one could see that my lunch was just rice. Sometimes not even that. But there was one person who saw me differently. Her name was Maya. She had long black hair that caught the sunlight and eyes that seemed to hold more kindness than anyone I'd ever met. Her family wasn't rich, but they weren't like us either. They had enough. They had security. They had tomorrow promised to them in ways we never did. I don't know why she noticed me. Maybe it was the day I fainted in class because I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Maybe it was the time she saw me getting pushed around by the older boys who thought my silence made me weak. But one day she sat next to me, just sat down, opened her lunch box and pushed half of it toward me without saying a word. I stared at that food like it was a miracle. I looked at her and she smiled. Not with pity, not with that look adults gave me that made me feel like a wounded animal. She smiled like we were just 2 kids sharing lunch, like it was normal, like I was normal. That was the beginning. Maya started sitting with me every day. She shared her food, her books, her pencils when mine broke. She talked to me about her dreams, about the stars, about books she'd read and places she wanted to see. She never asked me why my clothes were torn or why I came to school with bruises from working odd jobs after class. She just treated me like I mattered, like my thoughts were worth hearing, like my dreams were just as valid as anyone else's. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, and being seen by her made me want to become someone worth seeing. There was a boy named Arjun whose father owned half the businesses in our district. Arjun wore a different watch every week, watches that cost more than my mother made in a year. He drove to school in a car with a driver. He had everything, but what he seemed to love most was reminding everyone else what they didn't have. He noticed Maya sitting with me and it bothered him. Maybe because he'd tried to get her attention before and she'd politely declined. Maybe because he couldn't understand why someone would choose to sit with me when they could sit with him. One day, he walked up to our spot behind the building with his group of friends. They stood there looking down at us, and Arjun had that smile on his face, the kind that meant someone was about to get hurt. He looked at me, then at Maya, then back at me. "You really going to keep sitting with this beggar?" He said it loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. My face burned. I felt shame crawl up my spine like ice. Maya's expression hardened. She stood up, looked Arjun straight in the eye and said something I'll never forget. "He's worth 100 of you, and one day you'll know it." Then she took my hand and walked away, leaving Arjun standing there with his mouth open and his friends not sure whether to laugh or stay quiet. That moment changed something in me, not just because she defended me, because she believed in me. She believed I was worth something before I'd proven anything, before I'd done anything to deserve it. She planted a seed that day, a seed of belief that started growing in the dark soil of my hunger and shame. I started studying harder, not just to pass, but to excel. I stayed up late into the night under a single bulb, reading borrowed books until my eyes burned. I worked during the day, carrying bricks at construction sites, cleaning shops, doing anything that would put a few rupees in my pocket. I gave most of it to my moths. But I saved some, not much, just enough to believe I was building towards something. Maya encouraged me. She brought me books from her house, helped me with subjects I didn't understand, believed in me on days when I didn't believe in myself. We studied together, we dreamed together, and somewhere in those months and years, something deeper grew between us. something neither of us said out loud but both of us felt. It was in the way she looked at me when I solved a difficult problem. In the way I noticed everything about her, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she concentrated, the sound of her laugh, the warmth of her presence beside me. I loved her. I loved her with the kind of desperate intensity only someone who's had nothing can love someone who gave them everything. When I was 16, I won a national scholarship competition. The prize was a full ride to a prestigious university in the capital with a stipend for living expenses. When they announced my name, I couldn't breathe. I stood there on that stage looking out at the small crowd and I found Maya's face. She was crying and smiling at the same time, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. My mother was there too, sobbing openly, not caring who saw. That night, Maya and I sat on the roof of the school, legs dangling over the edge, looking at the city lights in the distance. I'm going to go, I told her. I'm going to take this chance and I'm going to make something of myself. I know, she said softly. I'm so proud of you. I turned to look at her. The moonlight caught her face just right and I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I'll come back, I said. When I've made it, when I have something to offer, I'll come back for you. Wait for me. She was quiet for a long time, then she reached over and took my hand. I'll wait, she whispered, however long it takes. I'll wait. We sat there holding hands until the sun started to rise, neither of us wanting the moment to end, both of us knowing everything was about to change. Leaving was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than hunger, harder than shame, harder than every beating I'd taken, every insult I'd swallowed. The day I left, my mother held me so tight I could barely breathe. She kissed my forehead and told me to make our suffering mean something. Maya came to see me off. We stood at the bus station and there were 1,000 things I wanted to say and no words big enough to hold them. She handed me a small notebook. I opened it and saw she'd written something on the first page. Come back to me, that's all it said, 3 words that would carry me through everything that came next. I hugged her, breathing in the smell of her hair, memorizing the feel of her in my arms. Then I got on that bus and didn't look back because I knew if I did, I'd never leave. The city was overwhelming. It was massive and loud and full of people who moved fast and talked fast and had no time for a kid from nowhere with holes in his shoes. The university was incredible, filled with the smartest people I'd ever met, people who'd had tutors and resources and opportunities I couldn't imagine. I was behind in so many ways, but I had something they didn't. I had hunger, not for food anymore, but for success. For proof that the promise I made my mother mattered. For the chance to go back to Maya as someone worthy of her faith. I studied like my life depended on it because it did. I slept 4 hours a night. I worked part-time jobs to send money home. I had no friends, no social life, no distractions, just books and work and the dream of going back. Every time I wanted to quit, every time the exhaustion felt like too much, I'd open that notebook and read those 3 words. Come back to me, and I'd keep going. I called Maya when I could, but it wasn't often. Phone calls were expensive and I was always broke. We wrote letters, long letters where we told each other everything. She told me about home, about her family, about finishing school and starting to work in her father's small business. I told her about my classes, about the city, about how much I missed her. Every letter ended the same way. I love you, wait for me. Her letters were what kept me human during those years. They reminded me that somewhere out there, someone believed in the kid I used to be and the man I was trying to become. But as time went on, the letters came less frequently. Life was happening, we were growing, changing. I started to worry. What if she met someone else? What if waiting for me was too much to ask? What if I came back and she'd moved on? But I pushed those thoughts away. She promised. She'd wait. She had to. After 4 years, I graduated top of my class. A technology company in the city offered me a position with a salary I couldn't even comprehend. It was more money than my mother had made in her entire life. I took the job. I worked harder than I'd ever worked before. I was good at it, better than go. Odd, I had ideas, innovations, solutions to problems others couldn't see. Within 2 years, I was promoted. Within 5, I was leading a division. Within 8, I'd started my own company with partners who believed in my vision. The company grew fast. We developed software that changed industries, that solved real problems, that made us not just successful but wealthy, truly wealthy. The kind of wealth I'd once thought only existed in movies. I bought my mother a house. A real house with rooms and light and a garden. She cried for 3 days straight when I gave her the keys. I tried to call Maya. The number I had didn't work anymore. I wrote letters to her old address. None came back, but none were answered either. I told myself I was too busy, that I'd go back soon, that once the next deal closed, once the company stabilized, once I had everything perfect, then I'd return. But the truth was darker than that. I was afraid. Afraid that too much time had passed. Afraid she'd moved on. Afraid she'd see me now and not recognize the boy she'd shared lunch with. Afraid I'd lost her by becoming the man I'd promised to become. 10 years passed, 10 years since I'd left on that bus. 10 years since I'd held her at the station. I was 33 years old. I was successful beyond anything I'd imagined. I had money, influence, respect. I'd been featured in magazines, invited to speak at conferences, courted by investors and politicians. I had everything except the one thing I'd wanted it all for. I had everything except her. Then one day I got a message through social media. It was from an old classmate, someone I barely remembered. The message said there was going to be a reunion, a gathering of everyone from our old school. It would be at a hotel in our hometown, the fanciest place there, the kind of place we used to walk past and dream about. And Maya would be there. My heart stopped when I read her name. 10 years of wondering, of fear, of questions I'd been too coward to ask. And now I'd have answers. I cleared my schedule. I made arrangements. And I decided I'd go back, not quietly, not sneaking in to see if she still cared. I'd go back as the man I'd promised to become. I'd show her that her faith hadn't been wasted, that the boy she'd believed in had kept his promise, that waiting, if she'd waited, had been worth it. The day of the reunion, I flew home, not on a bus this time, on a private plane. I wore a suit that cost more than my mother's old annual salary. I arrived at the hotel in a car that turned heads. But as I stood outside those doors, all the confidence, all the success, all the money, it didn't matter. My hands were shaking. I was terrified. What if she looked at me and felt nothing? What if the boy she'd loved was gone, replaced by someone she didn't recognize? What if I'd waited too long? I took a breath, remembered her face, remembered those 3 words in the notebook I still carried, and I walked inside. The ballroom was full of familiar faces aged by time. People I'd gone to school with, teachers who'd been young then and were gray now, classmates who'd ignored me or mocked me or never knew I existed. They were laughing, drinking, catching up on years lost. I walked in and the room didn't notice at first. Then someone recognized me, then another. Whispers started spreading like wildfire. That's him, that's the poor kid, he's a millionaire now. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. People started approaching me, suddenly friendly, suddenly interested, suddenly remembering we'd been such good friends. I smiled politely, shook hands, accepted congratulations. But I was scanning the room, looking for her. Then I saw Arjun. He'd gained weight, lost some hair, but he still had that same arrogant posture. He still thought he owned the room. He was standing with a group of people, talking loudly, laughing that same laugh I remembered. He saw me. His expression flickered, surprise, and something else, something that looked like resentment. He walked over with his drink in hand and that familiar smirk on his face. Well, well, he said loud enough for people nearby to hear. Look who showed up, the charity case. I heard you got lucky with some tech thing. Good for you. He said it like luck was the only explanation, like my decade of work, sacrifice, and sleepless nights were just fortune smiling on someone who didn't deserve it. I felt the old shame try to surface, that familiar feeling of being small and worthless, but it couldn't take root anymore. I wasn't that boy anymore. I smiled at him. Not a friendly smile, a knowing one. Luck had nothing to do with it, Arjun. Hard work did, something you wouldn't know much about. His smile faltered. People around us were listening now, sensing tension. He tried to recover. Still, you clean up nice. Almost look like you belong here now. Almost like you're not the beggar kid who used to eat garbage behind the building. The room went silent. People stared. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked curious, waiting to see what would happen. That old familiar anger rose in my chest. But before I could respond, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. He never ate garbage. He had more dignity in his poverty than you've ever had in your privilege. I turned and there she was, Maya, 10 years older but somehow even more beautiful. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes had tiny lines at the corners. She wore a simple dress, nothing expensive, but she didn't need expensive. She was radiant. She was looking at Arjun with an expression of pure contempt. Then her eyes moved to me, and everything else disappeared. The room, the people, the noise, all of it faded until it was just her eyes meeting mine across 10 years of distance. Her expression softened, her lips parted slightly, and I saw it. Recognition, memory. Emotion flooding through her like it was flooding through me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at her and feel everything I'd pushed down for 10 years come rushing back all at once. She walked toward me, the crowd parted. Each step she took felt like a lifetime. When she was close enough to touch, she stopped. We stood there looking at each other, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. "You came back," she whispered. Her voice was exactly as I remembered, warm, kind, home. "I promised I would," I said. My voice was rough with emotion. "I promised I'd make something of myself and come back. I kept my promise." A tear slid down her cheek. She smiled, that same smile from when we were kids, the one that made me feel like I mattered. "You already were something," she said softly. "You always were. You just needed the world to see what I already knew." I wanted to hold her, wanted to pull her into my arms and never let go. But there was something in her eyes, a sadness that made me hesitate. "Maya," I started, "I came back for you. I came back because you told me to, because you waited, because I love you. I've always loved you." She closed her eyes, more tears fell. When she opened them again, I saw the truth before she said it. "I waited," she said, her voice breaking. "I waited for 5 years. I kept every letter. I read them until the pages fell apart. I turned down every guy who asked me out. I told myself you'd come back, that any day you'd walk through the door and we'd pick up where we left off." My stomach dropped. "5 years," I said. "What happened after 5 years?" She took a shaky breath. "Life happened. My father got sick. The business struggled. We needed help. There was a man, a good man, who'd been a friend of my family for years. He helped us. He was there when we needed someone. He was kind and patient, and after a while my parents thought we should marry. I told them no at first. I told them I was waiting for you, but you didn't call, you didn't come. And I started to think maybe you'd forgotten. Maybe you'd moved on. Maybe the boy I loved was gone and this new successful person didn't have room for the girl from his past, so I said yes. We got married 3 years ago. The words hit me like physical blows. Married, she was married. I'd waited 10 years to come back to her and she'd waited half that time before moving on. I felt like the ground was opening up beneath me. All of it, all the work, all the sacrifice, all the nights I'd stayed awake thinking about this moment, it was for nothing. She was someone else's now. "Does he make you happy?" I heard myself ask. She looked at me with such sadness. "He's good to me," she said carefully. "He's stable and kind and he loves me. I care about him. Is that the same as happy?" I asked. I needed to know. I needed to understand if I'd lost her to someone who loved her the way I did or if I'd lost her to convenience and time. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know." I think I stopped letting myself believe in that kind of happy when I stopped believing you'd come back. The room was still watching us. Arjun had retreated, forgotten in the weight of this moment. Other people whispered, sensing the drama but not understanding the depth of it. I stood there looking at the woman I'd spent 10 years loving, the woman I'd built an empire to be worthy of, and I realized I was too late. Too late by 5 years. Too late by choices I didn't make fast enough. Too late by fear that had kept me away, until the moment turned into years, turned into a lifetime lived without me. "I should go," I said. "I'm sorry. I should have come sooner. I should have called more. I should have made you more of a priority. I'm sorry I let you down." I turned to leave. I couldn't stay there, couldn't stand in that room full of people who were watching my heart break in real time, but her hand caught my arm. "Wait," she said, "please wait." I turned back. She was crying openly now, not caring who saw. "You didn't let me down," she said. "You did exactly what you promised. You survived. You thrived. You became someone amazing. I'm so proud of you. So proud I can barely stand it, but I needed you and you weren't here. And I'm angry about that. I'm angry that you stayed away so long. I'm angry that you let fear or pride or whatever it was keep you from coming back until it was too late. But I'm also angry at myself for not waiting longer, for not having more faith, for choosing security over hope. I don't know if that makes me practical or a coward, but either way, we're here. And I don't know what to do with that." "What do you want to do?" I asked. She looked at me with an expression so complex I couldn't read it all. "Longing and regret and love and loss all mixed together. I want to go back," she said. "I want to be 16 again on that roof with your hand in mine and nothing decided yet. I want another chance to choose differently or to wait longer or to come find you instead of expecting you to come find me. But I can't. None of us can. I made choices. You made choices. And now we have to live with them." "Is he here?" I asked. "Your husband?" She shook her head. "He's traveling for work. He doesn't know about you." I never told him about the boy I loved in school who promised to come back. I thought that story was over. I thought you were a beautiful memory I'd carry forever but never see again. "I'm not a memory," I said. "I'm here, I'm real, and I still love you. I've loved you every day for 10 years. I'll love you every day for the rest of my life, whether you're with me or not. Tell me what you want, Maya. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. If you want me to stay, I'll stay. If you want me to fight for you, I'll fight. Just tell me what you want. She stood there looking at me, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by people pretending not to listen, and I saw her struggling with the weight of the choice. Finally, she spoke. I want you to let me figure it out, she said. I want time to think about what I want versus what I should do. I want you to not disappear for another 10 years while I figure that out. Can you give me that? Can you stay this time instead of running away? Her words cut deep because they were true. I had run away. I'd run away and stayed away and let time and distance steal what should have been ours. I nodded. I'll stay, I said. I'll be here however long it takes. Take your time, figure out what you need to figure out. I'll wait. It's my turn to wait. She smiled through her tears. That's all I needed to hear. Then she reached up and hugged me. It was brief, just a moment, but feeling her in my arms again after 10 years made every sacrifice worth it. When she pulled away, she looked at me one more time, memorizing my face the way I was memorizing hers. And then she walked away through the crowd that parted for her like the sea. I stood there in the middle of that ballroom, surrounded by people from a past that felt like another lifetime, and I felt strangely at peace. I'd come back, I'd found her, the story wasn't over, it was just more complicated than I'd imagined. But complicated didn't mean impossible. I'd built a company from nothing. I'd pulled myself out of poverty through will and work and the belief one person had planted in me. If I could do that, I could do this, I could wait, I could stay. I could prove that the boy she'd believed in had grown into a man worthy of that belief. Arjun approached me again, but this time without the smirk. He looked uncertain, maybe even apologetic. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for what I said earlier, for how I treated you back then. I was a stupid kid who didn't understand what real strength looked like. I looked at him and felt nothing, no anger, no need for revenge. He was just a man who'd peaked in high school and was trying to make sense of a world that had passed him by. It's fine, I said. We were all kids. We all did things we regret. He nodded, relieved, and walked away. Other people came up to me throughout the night, some genuinely happy to see me, others clearly interested in what I could do for them now. I was polite to everyone but present for no one. My mind was on Maya, on her tears, on her words. On the impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. I stayed in town. I rented a house, a beautiful place on the hill where we used to sit and look at the city lights. I set up a temporary office and worked remotely. I made it clear I wasn't going anywhere. Word spread fast in our small town. The poor boy who'd become rich was back and apparently waiting for something. People speculated. They gossiped. They created stories to fill in the gaps they couldn't see. I didn't care. Let them talk. I had more important things to focus on. I started getting involved in the community. I funded scholarships for kids like I used to be, kids with potential but no resources. I invested in local businesses. I hired people who needed work. I did what I wished someone had done for me. And slowly I became part of the town again. Not as the poor kid they'd pitied or ignored. As someone who'd left, succeeded, and chosen to come back. Maya and I saw each other occasionally. Brief moments, a passing at the market, a glimpse across the street. Each time our eyes met, there was an entire conversation happening in silence. I'm here, I see you, I'm still waiting, I'm still thinking, I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm not going anywhere. Months passed. I watched the seasons change. Summer turned to monsoon, turned to winter, and I waited. Then one evening there was a knock on my door. I opened it and there she was. Maya standing on my doorstep looking nervous and determined all at once. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside and she entered. We sat in the living room as the sun set outside, painting the sky in colors that reminded me of that night on the roof a lifetime ago. I told him, she said without preamble. I told my husband about you, about us, about everything. I took a breath, afraid to ask but needing to know. What did he say? She looked down at her hands. He said he always knew there was a part of me I kept locked away. He said he'd loved me, hoping that one day I'd open that part to him, but he could see now that it was never going to happen. He was angry, hurt, but he was also understanding in a way that made me feel even worse. He asked me what I wanted, and I told him the truth. What's the truth? I asked quietly. She looked up at me and I saw everything in her eyes. The truth is I never stopped loving you, she said. The truth is I've been living half a life, going through motions, being a good wife to a good man while my heart was somewhere else. The truth is when I saw you walk into that ballroom, I felt alive for the first time in years. And the truth is I'm terrified because choosing you means hurting someone who doesn't deserve to be hurt. It means blowing up a life I built because I gave up waiting. It means admitting I made a mistake. But the bigger mistake would be staying in a marriage where I'm always wishing I was somewhere else, with someone else, with you. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Are you saying what I think you're saying? She nodded, tears forming again. I'm saying I choose you. I'm saying I should have waited longer. I'm saying I'm sorry it took me this long to have the courage to choose my own happiness. I'm saying I love you. I've always loved you. And if you still want me after everything, after the mess I've made, I'm yours. I was across the room in a heartbeat. I pulled her into my arms and held her like I should have held her 10 years ago, like I should have never let go. She held me back just as tightly, both of us crying, both of us releasing a decade of longing and loss and love that had survived everything. I want you, I said into her hair. I've always wanted you. I'll always want you. Nothing that happened changes that. We held each other as the sun finished setting and the room filled with darkness. We didn't move to turn on lights. We just held each other and let the weight of the years finally lift. When we finally pulled apart, we were both smiling through tears. It's going to be complicated, she said. There's going to be gossip and judgment and people who don't understand. My family is going to be upset. His family is going to hate me. The whole town is going to talk. Let them talk, I said. I didn't come back here for them. I came back for you. I've spent 10 years caring what people think, trying to prove I was worth something. I'm done with that. The only person I need to prove anything to is you. And the only thing I want to prove is that choosing me wasn't a mistake. We figured it out slowly. Maya moved out of her husband's house. The divorce was painful and messy and filled with guilt on her part and anger on his. The town did talk endlessly, some people sympathizing, others condemning, most just entertained by the drama of it all. Her parents were disappointed initially but came around when they saw she was truly happy for the first time in years. His family never forgave either of us, which was fair. We'd hurt someone they loved. That guilt would always be there, a shadow on our happiness. But the happiness was real too. Maya moved into the house on the hill with me. We started over not as the kids we'd been but as the adults we'd become. We learned each other again, her favorite tea, my habit of working too late, the way she hummed when she cooked. The way I still woke up sometimes from dreams where I was poor and hungry and nobody. We healed each other's wounds and created new memories strong enough to stand alongside the old ones. A year after she moved in, I asked her to marry me, not in some grand public gesture, just the two of us on the roof where we used to sit as teenagers. I got down on one knee and I asked her to spend the rest of her life with me. She said yes before I even finished the question. We got married in a small ceremony with only people who mattered, my mother who cried through the entire thing, Maya's parents who'd accepted that their daughter's heart had made its choice. A few real friends who'd supported us through the mess, no one else, we didn't need anyone else. On our wedding night, we lay in bed talking about everything and nothing, and Maya said something I'll never forget. You know what the difference is between you and everyone else I've ever known? I asked what. You're the only person who ever saw past what I could give you to who I actually was. Everyone else saw the girl who shared her lunch, the helpful friend, the supportive wife. You saw me, the real me. The me I wanted to be, and you loved that person. That's why I could never let you go, even when I tried, even when I married someone else. You were always the one who saw me. I held her close and told her the truth. You saved my life, Maya. Not by giving me food or books or belief, though all of that mattered. You saved my life by making me believe I deserved to be saved, that a kid with nothing had value. That's something I can never repay. But I can spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much it mattered, how much you matter. She kissed me then, and it felt like coming home after the longest journey. It felt like the end of the story we'd been writing since we were children, except it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. We've been married 5 years now. We have a daughter who has her mother's eyes and, according to Maya, my stubborn determination. I still run my company, but I do it from here, from this town I once couldn't wait to escape. Maya started a foundation that helps kids from poor families get education and resources. We named it Second Chances because that's what we got. A second chance to get it right. The house on the hill is filled with light and laughter and love. My mother lives with us now, retired and content, spending her days spoiling her granddaughter and tending the garden. Sometimes I still wake up and can't believe this is my life, that I went from that hungry kid eating alone behind the school building to this. To her, to us. To a life I didn't dare dream about because it seemed too impossible. People still talk about us sometimes. The poor boy who got rich and stole another man's wife, that's how some people see it. But the people who matter know the truth. They know this isn't a story about stealing or luck or even about success. It's a story about a promise kept, about a girl who saw value in someone everyone else overlooked, about love that survived time and distance and mistakes, about the power of believing in someone before they believe in themselves. I went back to that school once, the one where it all started. It's been renovated now, cleaner, better funded, partly because of donations from people like me who crawled out of poverty and wanted to pull others up behind us. I walked to the spot behind the building where Maya first sat with me, where she shared her lunch and changed my life. There are kids there now having lunch, laughing, being young. None of them know the story of what happened in that spot decades ago. None of them know that the man in the expensive suit standing there watching them used to be one of them. That's okay, they don't need to know. I just needed to stand there and remember the hunger, remember the shame. Remember the moment one person's kindness planted a seed that grew into everything. I made a promise that day to myself. I promised that no kid in this town would ever go hungry the way I did, that no kid would feel worthless the way I felt, that every kid would have at least one person who believed in them the way Maya believed in me. I've kept that promise. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to repay what she gave me, but it's something. It's a way of honoring the boy I was and the woman who saved him. At night when everyone's asleep and the house is quiet, I sometimes go out on our balcony and look at the stars. The same stars Maya and I used to look at when we dreamed about futures we couldn't see clearly but believed in anyway. I think about the path that brought me here, every painful step, every moment of hunger and shame and determination, every sacrifice, every fear, every triumph. And I realize that all of it, every single moment, was necessary. It was necessary for me to feel that depth of poverty to appreciate this abundance. It was necessary for me to leave so I could come back. It was necessary for her to marry someone else so she could choose me for the right reasons. It was necessary for us to almost lose each other so we'd know how precious this is. None of it was wasted. None of it was for nothing. It was all building toward this, toward us. Toward a life where a poor boy and a kind girl grew up and found their way back to each other against every odd. If I could go back and talk to that 7-year-old kid, lying awake in a room too small to be wreathed, hungry and scared and hopeless, I'd tell him to hold on. I'd tell him that yes, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt more than he can imagine. He's going to feel worthless and invisible and like the world has forgotten he exists. But I'd also tell him that one day a girl is going to sit next to him and share her lunch. And that moment is going to change everything. That girl is going to believe in him, and that belief is going to give him the strength to survive, to work, to fight, to become someone. And decades later, after mistakes and pain and time that tried to tear them apart, he's going to marry that girl. He's going to build a life with her that neither of them could have imagined. He's going to be happy in ways he didn't know existed. So hold on, I'd tell him, the hunger doesn't last forever. The pain doesn't last forever. But the promise you make, the love you find, the person you become, that lasts. That's forever. Hold on. Maya comes out onto the balcony and wraps her arms around me from behind. You're thinking too much again, she says softly. I smile, just remembering. I tell her, remembering how we got here. She rests her head against my back. It was worth it, wasn't it? All of it, every painful step. I turn around and hold her face in my hands. Every single one, I say. I'd do it all again, exactly the same if it meant ending up right here with you. She smiles, that smile that saved me 1,000 times. Come to bed, she says. Tomorrow's a new day. We have the rest of our lives. We don't have to solve everything tonight. She's right. We have time now, something we didn't have before, something we almost lost, something we'll never take for granted again. We go back inside, turning off lights as we go, leaving the stars to shine on empty balconies. And I think about how strange and beautiful life is. How a sandwich shared behind a school building can change 2 lives. How kindness can compound over years into love. How a promise made by a desperate boy can be kept by the man he becomes. How coming back can sometimes mean finally arriving. The moral of this story isn't that hard work pays off, though it does. It isn't that love conquers all, though sometimes it tries. It's simpler than that and more profound. It's that when someone believes in you, truly believes in you when you have nothing to offer in return, it creates a debt that can never be fully repaid, but you can honor it. You can become the person they saw before you saw it yourself. You can keep your promises even when it takes longer than you thought. You can come back even when you're afraid. You can wait even when waiting hurts. You can choose love even when it's complicated. Because at the end of the day, success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. Money means nothing if it can't buy back time with the people who matter. And all the achievements in the world are hollow compared to the simple, profound joy of being seen and loved by someone who knows exactly who you are and chooses you anyway. That's what Maya gave me. That's what I spent 10 years trying to earn. And that's what I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for. Not the wealth, not the company, not the success, but her, always her, the girl who sat next to a poor boy and saw someone worth believing in. The woman who waited and then didn't wait and then chose to wait again. The love that survived everything because it was built on the only foundation that matters. She saw me when I was invisible, and I came back to show her she was right.